guess we can start. Welcome everybody to Module 1, second session, Defining Your Business for the Canadian Market. Our guest for Colombia is here. Thank you, Luis Felipe, for joining us. I'm gonna start. So I want to introduce myself. My name is Viviana Aguirre. I'm a program manager and global strategist at HP Inc. I have over 15 years experience in the technology industry. I'm an industrial engineer for La Sabana University in Colombia. Also, I hold a certification from the PMI in project management professional. And also, I'm a digital marketing and strategy certified from the DMI, which is an institute in Ireland. My experience started as a researcher in La Sabana University. I love reading, I love researching, so this fit like as a glove. So while I studied, I was a researcher in their labs, so it was fun for me. Then as an industrial engineer, I had a year of industrial engineering in Mills de Colombia. If you don't know what Mills de Colombia is the company that does creme helado. So I was there for a year, and then I figured out like industrial engineering wasn't for me. Even I was at the end of my career, I didn't enjoy it much. And then I moved into more like a finance type of role, and then I have my career in HP, and then I've been in HP for most of my experience life, moving in different types of roles. And also I do a lot of freelancing on my free time or when I can. I have been living in Canada with my family for the past 10 years, and I consider myself both Colombian and Canadian. So I both countries kind of like the same. I don't know. I sometimes I love Canada more, sometimes Colombia more. Right. The learning objectives for today during this presentation would be that you are able to define the problem for your business to Canadian customers, Canadian industry, and whatnot. Determine a product model revenue that works, kind of like determining how can you set the right pricing. And maybe you have the right pricing for countries in Latin America or in Colombia, but it may be different, or your product or service could be valued differently in Canada. And I want you to explore that as well. And then describe how you will succeed in this market. And that is very important because it defines your value proposition to enter Canada. So during this session, and are you able to see my slides moving?
Yes.
All right, awesome. I will try. This is more theory, and I want to let you know that we do have these theory sessions. Sometimes you are responsible of doing some of the activities that we're going to describe here. Maybe it's other people in your organization. So you may need to look and find who is responsible of doing these activities in your organization. So you have a comprehensive view, and you can use those tools or capabilities that we're going to describe here to prepare your business plan for Canada, right? So as I mentioned before, as I mentioned during the introduction, we have different modules, and we're going to move in those different modules from a business planning perspective. This module in particular is more focused to your customer, your market, and defining your product service. Danny Ho, who's on the line, is going to help us at the end of this module. We will focus in 3 things. Sizing your market, like what does it mean? Like what do you have to do? Customer, and how to adapt your product and services for Canada. And Danny is going to spend his time, or the last hour of this 2-hour session, explaining and giving you tools and capabilities to define that product service for Canada. And hopefully you find that that session really, really interesting. All right. Till there, any expectations? for this? Any questions so far? All right. So let's start with what is the problem you're trying to solve? And this is something that understanding how your products solve a particular customer pain point is very, very important. But you need to not only see it from your, let's say, customer perspective or like from your perspective, you need to see it also from your customer perspective. And yes.
Sorry to interrupt. There is somebody that is saying that cannot see the slides. I just want to confirm if everybody else is seeing the slides on the presentation.
Yes, we can see them.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. I may continue. So you need to define your product from the customer, let's say, point of view. And sometimes the customer uses your product totally different, right? I'm going to give you the example of Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola was initially designed to solve the morphine addiction like 100 years ago. But it became one of the best or like the most let's say, popular soft drink in the whole world, right? And this is due to the customer usage. So you need to identify those trends. You need to identify how your customers are using your product, or maybe they are using it for a certain particular niche. And those niche you need to understand. Like, for example, you're developing Internet of Things for a company. Let's say you're developing that as part of your technology embracing. And that Internet of Things, let's say, is for appliances in the household. Let's say the fridge and whatnot. You need to understand how your customer is using the Internet of Things technology and where is this customer applying those technologies, so you can also expand your customer base. So that's when you start to understand what are the problems and the pain points that you can solve with your product and service. And this will all be key to develop your value proposition, especially here for Canada. As Erin explained in the session Tuesday, she said Canadians are really like penny pinchers. They really do their research and they really look for value in the products that they are buying. All right, let me move on. Then the second thing of defining what is the problem you're trying to solve is that you're able to describe your customer, right? Like, what is your customer profile? How is your perfect customer look like, right? Like, are they lookers, bargain hunters? Are they app users? Like, do they like to read? Are they in a certain location? So I know that there's a company here that serves farming. So you need to understand, like, where is farming located? What type of farming are we targeting, right? Like, is it cattle? Is it corn? Is it soy? What is it what we're trying to do? So try to picture your customer, like which are the companies or persons that you're trying to target, and describe how are they like behaving, right? Also, besides like where are they located, like geographically, the race, the sex, the income, the location, you will also need to understand their behaviors, right? Like, how do they spend? How do they behave? Like, when and where do they decide to buy? When and where, or what triggers that they want to use a service like yours? So those are the things that that you need to focus when you are defining the customer that is going to use your product, right? Till there, I'm going to stop there and see if you have any questions so far. All right. Then another key aspect to define the problem you're trying to solve is determine the customer benefits. And you need to be very clear, right? Like, when defining the benefits, is it something that you're saving time for the customer, you're increasing the quality of the services or products they offer. Is it cost benefits? And you have an advantage here, right? Like when you see the currency between Colombia and Canada, sometimes if you provide the value proposition and you play the cost advantage of the currency differences, that is very important, right? Like that is something that you need to include in your value proposition. And focus really on why these customers need to buy from you instead of your competitor, right? So as soon as you solve those 3 points that I just described, you are defining your problem and the problem you're trying to solve for Canadian customers. So I'm going to stop there to see if you have any questions. As I said before, this session is more theory, and there are things that maybe you know and things that maybe you do on your daily basis. If you don't, then you need to reach out to those organizations to get this type of information.
Viviana, this is Pedro.
Hey, Pedro.
Yes, I just have a curious question. Is this kind of variables that you describe that, let's say, they are kind of key differentiators in the market, which of them are the most, let's say, important in the Canadian culture? So currently, with the people and the knowledge that you guys have in the IT industry, do they give more value to some of these ones? Because, for example, when you are comparing just pricing, perhaps they can go to India, so they can go to another place that is cheaper or something like that. But do they really give more value to the time zone because we are closer in the time zone? Do they really give more value to the quality, for example, instead of pricing? So what is your perspective?
So as we describe the Canadians like people in Erin's session, we are really value oriented. So we are give me the straight facts and get to the point, right? So one of the things that I will encourage you to always do is to start with your value. Start always with the benefits of your product, right? Obviously, telling what your product does, right? Like what are the pain points that you're trying to solve, but always starting with the facts. Like we are very fact oriented. So from these 3 points that I just described is obviously define your customer, and when you're targeting that customer, always start like with the benefits. This is the benefits that you can get from using our product or service, and our product or service solve these pain points for you, right? So I will say that Canadians are very value oriented and facts oriented, right? Like they don't like fluffy words. They like, what are the facts? How much time are we saving? Am I saving any costs? Like what else are you giving me with your product? What is your value, right?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, with that, there's 2 companies that I want to highlight today on how they define their products, right? One of them is Shopify, and Shopify started as a company that sold snowboards. They couldn't find like an e-commerce solution that satisfied their needs. So they went and created their own e-commerce solution, right? And that started like that. But as soon as they put their shop online, other retailers started to see value in their business model, right? And they said like, no, we did our e-commerce online. And some of these companies started to approach Shopify and say like, how can we get on board? Like, we would like to use the e-commerce solution that you're using. And now they expanded to be one of the e-commerce solutions that people use globally for online retail stores and on-the-go solutions. So the way they are describing, they tell a little bit of story of we couldn't find something, and probably you as a company or as a person are not finding value in your e-commerce solution because you don't have the control you need so for your business to succeed, right? So they are also telling when they are describing their product, right? Like, and as you can see here, they are very succinct in what they are saying. And we are supporting businesses of all sizes. So they're saying we are not only supporting like big companies like Walmart or Coors Light, right? We are also supporting small businesses as well that sell online, they have retail stores, or they have things on the go, right? So this is very important. And as you can see here, they have described not only what they are as a company, also the value they bring to the table. And this is where you need to get when you are bringing your product or service or solution into Canada. The other company that I want to highlight is Kinaxis. So Kinaxis is a company that does cloud-based solution software for supply chain solutions. So as you can see here, they are saying, we know that every day brings a lot of volatility, and that demands quick action. We can offer you cloud-based software as a service solutions that enable you to take decisions and integrate business planning into your supply chain. They are saying they are like very specific on what their product does, what the value proposition is, that is cloud-based, that you can do fast decisions, and it's targeted for the people, right? Like people can plan better. So they're saying this is not only for big companies, this is also for people that have a supply chain solution. So they are saying they can integrate this into other things, into other, let's say, solutions. So as you can see here, these two companies are Canadian, and they are very succinct, very to the target of what the value or the product proposition is. With that, gonna stop there. Any questions? And hopefully this gives you like a quick, let's say, overview of how Canadians see value in the companies they work. All right, let's continue. So part of starting not only defining your product or service, right, and defining your customers and whatnot, there's certain tools that you can use in order to do that, to understand your market. And you need to size, right? Size your market. How can you size your market? Using market research, right? So market research like pretty much does like the analysis of how many people, companies, or let's say of solutions or partners can you reach in a particular market. You can use census reports and economic reports. As part of the meeting notes, we are including, not only me, but Danny as well, all of the census links. So you can access that information, and also company links. So you can access, like, depending on your industry, where you are. In the little assignment that I left back in December, I asked you if you have like a code where you describe the product of service that you are. That particular code can tell you how to size your industry, right? Like how to size customers that are like buying products or services in a particular industry. And that is pretty much to help you like size your market. The second thing that you can use to size your market is your analyst reports. And this is just so you can describe your customer better. So that second attribute that I described is like, what are the consumer analysts saying about trends, about how Canadians are buying products or services, especially for your particular industry. Those links are also included here. And then competitors analysis. If you understand how you are classifying the industry and what segment of that industry you're competing, you can go and see your competitors analysis. What are they doing? What are the customers that they are reaching? How are they pricing their products? That is very, very important as you enter a new market, that you're able to do this exercise and understand your market, like how many people can you actually reach in Canada, or companies you can reach in Canada, how do they behave and what are the trends of these customers or companies? What are they, let's say, outsourcing, or what are they supplying from outside that you can pitch in your value or service proposition? And obviously, what are the competitors here, like either from Canada or outside of Canada? Because as you know, we have companies from everywhere. So with that, I'm going to stop there and see if you have any questions so far. All right. You're very quiet today. All right. So I'm going to do a quick market sizing example. I'm going to ask you to raise your hand and tell me, have you done a market sizing before? Or is this something new for you guys? All right, I see 3 people have done market sizing before. What about the rest? 4 people have done market sizing. That's good. 5 people have done market sizing. All right, so a few of you now know what we're doing here. So I'm just going to walk through a quick example of, I took this from an MBA course that a friend of mine was doing. And it is not totally related to technology, but it is an example that highlights pretty much the 3 key points that I've been telling you, right? Like size your market, look at your customer, and then look at your competitors. How much can you charge for it? So the exercise will focus on those in the 1 to 3. This is what we're trying to find in this particular exercise. So this example is about a biopharmaceutical company that does animal blood substitutes. So instead of actual blood, they are doing a substitute that can help pets, right, recover from, let's say, emergency situations or acute blood loss, right? So this company or this biopharmaceutical wants to launch their product as because they have reached certain point in their maturity to get there. So they need to size what could be their potential penetration in the blood supply. They need to understand what is the customer segment that they can target, and then the third piece is like how much can they charge for their blood substitute, right? So one of the key data points of this exercise, and I will provide the slides so you can have them and have a little more insight, is that this biopharmaceutical has Canopur, that is the blood supply for blood loss, emergency, and trauma surgeries. It is currently reaching the FDI approval. They have received 50 million in capital, and with that 50 million, they have a capacity to produce 300,000 units. And I'm gonna leave these 300,000 units here because that is the max the max capacity that they have. How does this translate to technology? That translates as well into how many hands do you have to really support the product or service. So you need to also see what constrains your business to reach full capacity, right? Then the value proposition of Canopur is that the cost is not known at this stage, and as they don't know the cost, they are gonna try to price it from knowing what the value proposition is, how are customers willing to pay for it. Now they're gonna research the market and they're gonna review the competitors. So competitors wide, they are the only ones that have FDA, which puts them in an advantage. From the technology point of view, you need to really determine how are you competing in a certain industry. Like, for example, if you're doing Internet of Things has a wide variety of segments. So you need to really dig down into, we do Internet of Things for, let's say, supply chain. And then you need to like look at those codes, like this is Internet of Things, and then my segment or my subsegment is supply chain, while other people may be doing Internet of Things for, let's say, appliances, right? So those segments are very important for you to determine, right? And then you can look at your competitors. And then the retail pricing, like what are people like paying for the product or service. In the case of this, let's say, exercise, there's not blood supply similar to what they are offering. So they need to look at the blood supplies, what they have right now in the market, which is actual blood, right? Till there, any questions regarding the exercise? All right. So you need to, for any company, you need to start with data observations. So you need to understand your segment and how that segment behaves. So they understood that blood supplies are only used when they have in emergency care units or hospitals. So they did like who does these types of blood transfusions, right? So you have, oh, if you can put yourself on mute, that would be wonderful. Thank you. All right. So in this particular exercise, what they said is, oh, okay, so emergency care units or veterinarians are the ones that pretty much that do the blood transfusion. So they saw the data observations they saw is like we have doctor practices all over the place, right? And they do emergency care practices. And they saw the number of transfusions that they did of blood. So they saw a potential of looking at how many like transfusions in total these care units do like in the year. And they said like they do an 11 million transfusions. As they said, like their capacity, if we go back to the data points, their capacity is 300,000. So they said, you know what? The emergency care unit transfusion could be an area that we can focus because we can supply and get to our capacity and participate and take a piece of that market. As you can see here, the data observations, they also ask how much are they paying today for the blood transfusion. So they bring that pricing. And that is something that you need to also do, right? Like once you understand your segment and you understand where you compete, you can also survey like how many people are buying your product or service, how much are they paying for that, right? And start doing those data observations. I'm gonna not focus on this. This is acute blood loss, and how many of those do they do, let's say, in emergency practice. But just by focusing on this segment, they can reach their capacity, for example. So we just solved the first data pointer, like what is my segment? Where can I promote this, right? So they decided, okay, we're going to promote this in the emergency care practice because we can take a piece of the market and still compete really, really well. The second piece is focusing on customers. So who are the customers? In this case, are the veterinarians, right? And also their indirect customers are like the pet owners, right? You need to understand that as well, right? Like when you are like, for example, servicing like some company in the farming in the farming segment, as an example, right? You need to understand who are the indirect customers of those companies, right? Like, as I said before, it could be corn, it could be soy, or it could be cattle, right? So by understanding the indirect customers, you can also understand their behavior and understand how much are they willing to pay for a product or service like yours. So I want you to focus on that when you're doing your market research and your market citing for Canada. Even if you don't do it, try to ask those data pointers to the people in your company that does this exercise. By doing this, if we see the example, right, they did a survey of how willing are they able to, or how willing are they able to try the product, right? Like the blood substitute, right? For critical and non-critical like cases, right? So, for example, if it is very critical, right? So this is the veterinarians on the left. This is the owners on the right. So they said if there's critical cases, let's say 20% of them said they wouldn't use this product, right? If it were priced up like in 100, right? They said like they wouldn't use it. Like even less than 10% said like if it is a $200, a veterinarian wouldn't buy a blood supply or like this type of blood substitute, right? But if the price were to drop, right, as you can see here, a veterinarian will buy a product at a very similar price, like the $50 that we saw in the research. Remember that. They will buy a very similar price for the blood substitute. So they pay a 50 today, they want to pay, if you see the 100, they want to pay a very similar price, right? But if you focus only on your direct customer, you can miss an opportunity, right? And it is like the indirect customer, when they saw the pet owners, they said, oh, if you price at 400, 20%. So they are more willing to pay a little bit more for a blood substitute because it is their pet. They love their pet. And that's what you need to understand as well, like how your indirect customers behave. So you can price if you don't know the costs of your product or service, like how the indirect customer will value your product or service. So you can price it accordingly. So as you can see here, they said almost 100% they are willing to pay $100 for a blood substitute. So they decided, you know what, our target market will be emergency clinics. Pet owners are willing to pay a little bit more, and we can price, even if the veterinarian doesn't want to pay at $200, they understand that the customer or the indirect customer or the pet owner will pay that price. So they decided to pay it at $200 per unit, right? And that's how they determine, without knowing the cost, a price for their product. And similar exercises you need to do for your product or service. So I'm going to stop there. And I want to do a little survey. So I want you to go on your cell phone, right? And go to this website, polev.com/Viviaguirre179. And I want you to answer this question. Like, how will you measure the market penetration for the technology industry? So I want you to go to that website. It will prompt you with the little with the little survey, so you can answer and we can see what do you think. What do you need? What do you need to do to measure your market penetration?
Sorry, Viviana, why people is feeling this? Maybe you can help me with some question that I have.
Claro, of course.
So, without hiring a marketing research company, how we can get like all the information about the market for specific industries in Canada? I don't know if there are like some different websites, like public websites, where we can find this sizing.
Yes. So fortunately enough, we have Danny, and we are having an interactive session on how you can research these types of things and use tools and capabilities to do this adjusting of the product service. And but I will provide you with all the links, so you can go to the census and look at the industries. I will also send you links on the analyst reports, so you can understand companies and consumer behaviors.
Thanks a lot.
You're welcome. All right. Did everyone reply? I'm gonna give a few more minutes for you to answer the question. We are really divided here. All right, so I'm gonna stop there if we could continue to move. So to research your market penetration, you need all of the above, right? You need to measure how companies are using the type of product, like that is consumer behavior. Also, you need to size the amount of people on a particular market, because as I said before, it's not only the companies that are buying your product or service, it's also the users, right? Like how many people are really in Canada, right? Like, for example, if you have an Internet of Things that is solving a particular, let's say, appliances, appliances are all over, like in every household, right? So you need to understand how many people in Canada and how many people per household, so you can do that research. Like, you also need to measure your potential customers, right? Like, so maybe you have identified a possible pain point that is not identified before. So you need to measure those potential customers, or that potential like indirect market that no one has seen. And then measure the sales, like measure your competitors, right? Like if we go back, I'm going to go back really quickly here, right? You need to measure like the sales of either similar products, if your product is totally unique, right? Or like products that are actually the same, right? Like what are the sales of those? So the answer to the question is all of the above. You need to understand all of those so you can do market penetration. All right. So with that, let's move on. So to define your product or service for Canada, as the examples that I have given you so far, you need to explain your company and your product in a simple words. You need to be very succinct. As we said before, we don't like the fluffy story. Canadians are more like to the point and fact oriented. Try to avoid like buzzwords, like, oh yeah, we do blockchain. Like instead of doing that, as I said before, and I guess it was Pedro who asked the question, instead of doing like, oh yes, we do blockchain, kind of like focus on how the data is managed, right? Instead of saying doing blockchain, say like, we manage the data in this way. It will benefit you because it brings you certain efficiencies, security, and administration fees that can reduce your costs. So you are actually describing blockchain, but with all the facts and the benefits, right? So that's how the Canadian mindset works. Be descriptive and to the point, and then include all the benefits, as I said before, like how much are we saving? Is it time savings? Is it like for those that are in production company, there's certain companies here that are looking for new content or content that is more, let's say, rare, right? Or for digital marketing, there's promotions or things that in emerging markets like Colombia, right? Like you use different types of marketing. I don't know if someone that has lived here in Canada, when you see the TV promotions, how they compare to Colombian TV promotions or TV advertising, it's just so different, right? So I want you to go and look at those and see how the benefits are included in those. So I want to focus and bring to your attention Canvas Analytic. So Canvas Analytic is a company that does artificial intelligence software in Toronto. They do different predictive analytics platforms and integrate those to different companies. And usually those companies are in the oil and gas and energy, right? So they include this platform or AI to predict how these companies that sell energy or have oil and gas can optimize or minimize the energy cost and reduce their carbon footprint. As we said before, Canada is very sustainable oriented. So if you have a sustainable story, I will encourage you to use it. So as you can see here, when they describe, if we go back and define their product or service, right? They start like by describing what they are, what they do, right? Like we create predictive analytics for plant-wide energy optimization, right? Like we minimize energy cost and we reduce the overall carbon footprint. Now, when I said we are fact-oriented, this is where we are fact-oriented. So they bring examples of customer stories or what they did for a particular customer, right? And as you can see here, they realize productivity gains. They also implement predictive maintenance programs. They optimize health and identify the underperforming processes. But they also, AI is helping companies reduce, like as they say here, like they improve 13% of their fuel efficiency while reducing their CO2 emissions. So as you can see here in this particular example for Canvas Analytics, that's how they define their products. That's how they define the value proposition, what they do as a company, and how with facts they can bring more clients or increase their customer base. All right. So how will you win? And this will connect with what Danny Ho is going to do in his presentation, and is how will you win? So pretty much, what are your strengths? Like weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Always do a SWOT analysis, right? Your strengths, if you identify them really, really well, can generate demand. It can generate brand recognition, and you can show your goodwill for customer satisfaction. And that is very, very important, that you know your strengths really, really well, because you can use those strengths as benefits of your product or company. Your weaknesses it's something that your competitors can highlight and can take customers away from you. So try to identify those so you can show your customers, like, yes, we do have this weakness, but we're working to fix it. We're working to improve it, right? And you can have different product roadmaps, right? Like if you have, let's say, a security gap, then you can say, like, we're working on it. This is our roadmap and we will fix this in future releases, for example. And also it is everything that stops you from performing the best. Opportunities are external factors that make you more competitive, right? And this goes back to identifying your customers and doing that customer opportunity research, right? Like, where can your product, remember that Coca-Cola example? Like, try to question your customers, like, how are you using my product or service? So you can see those opportunities for yourself and seize the market and open new niche. And then your threats, right? Like, factor all the potential harm that your business can have, right? Like, either from operating from Colombia, or if you decide to incorporate in Canada, like, what are the risks that you have? And it could be like maybe talent oriented, it could be language oriented. So try to to collect those as a whole. And those threats can also highlight like how can you provide business continuity if they become a reality. So with that, I want to thank you all. We can take maybe a 5-minute break if you like. And then I will welcome Danny Ho as our guest speaker today. I don't know if we have Luis Felipe on the line.
I'm here. Yeah, sure. I mean, we can have a 5-minute break if everyone agrees. So maybe
Luis
come back at 4:52.
Yes. So maybe we come back 4:55. You can take a 5-minute break. I know a 2-hour session sometimes may be difficult. Or maybe if you have any questions, I see some hands raised. I don't know if it was due to the previous exercise or if you have any questions for me.
I was just going to say to help us with your name and company's name, because sometimes it's difficult to see who are the people on the session, considering there is only like their first name. So if you can help us with your name and the company's name, we would appreciate it.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Is there any questions for me?
So I think the question would be here, what you have explained about the sizing and the market research and how to use data to take decisions and define your strategy plan. How will that match with Danny's let's say presentation? I know this is going to be
Danny,
the next topic, but
yeah, the next topic is he's gonna walk us through like how you position your product, and maybe Danny, if you would like to jump in and give a little context, but how will you position your product for Canada, right? Like giving you tools that most Canadian companies use here to position their product for Canada. But Danny, I can
I can add more to that. Thank you. So the approach I'm taking is showing you some commonly used tools that companies here use, such as business process modeling, road mapping, mind mapping. And these are tools for any company to reflect on how they do things, what they do, what their value proposition is, so that whether they're speaking to investors, to potential clients, to the end user, maybe a little less so the end user, because that's where maybe marketing and B2C teams do their work. But this is more for getting alignment within your company, but also with your customers who you're reaching out with, to better understand that story that Viviana was talking about, building that story. Here, I think in Canada, people are very rational minded and very process minded. And it was actually very encouraging when Viviana was saying, in Colombia, people just go. They act. And that's actually more me. Sometimes things are too slow up here for me. I was in the US for 7 years and they are much faster than up here. But nonetheless, you have to know your audience. And so what I go through in my section are some of these tools to give you some moments to reflect and say, have I checked all these boxes when we talk about our own company? Whether we're planning or strategizing or communicating, maybe you'll find that there are some pieces you can emphasize more to provide that much stronger, more comprehensive story to your audience. So I think you shall see some maybe useful tools, and some actually tie very closely what Viviana has already covered this hour. All right. So everyone can see my slides now?
Yes, Danny.
Yes, perfect. Okay, great. So thank you very much. So this session is adjusting product service for Canada. There is some interactivity in it, maybe some Q&A in both directions. But at the end, I heard there was some emphasis on numbers and statistics in the industry. And so I might divert a little bit more time in the end piece, actually. So I might speed up the beginning, middle part, so that we could perhaps as a group do some exploration and have some open-ended questions, and you can watch me or also try yourself to explore some of the industry data that Viviana was talking about. Okay, so just very quickly about myself. I grew up in Toronto. I was from China at a very young age. I was born in China, but I was raised here. And in many years, I went to junior, elementary, high school here, went to university here. So I have bachelor's, master's in systems design engineering from Waterloo. I went to the States to join my wife. She was doing her doctorate. We met here in Waterloo, actually, but she went to do her doctorate in the US, so I joined her. And I ended up doing healthcare research and then also doing a doctorate myself while I was waiting for her. When we moved back up here, I taught at the University of Waterloo in healthcare informatics, but also did some leading of user research and experience design at healthcare startups. I also did some directive engineering, leading development groups for credit repair and finance services company here. But their mothership was in fact in the US. And then for the past few years, I've also been at a couple of innovation centers or innovation labs, both for Canadian Tire. They're like a very large retailer in Canada, but also the Liquor Board of Ontario. So that's the LCBO, and that's where I'm at right now. I took a peek at the different companies that are presented here in a workshop, and so I did a little bit of self-categorization. There's a little bit of blur, I think, between digital service and digital content agency, but I noticed that there aren't that many startups per se, right? And more companies that have service or offering or products to offer other companies and for them to sell perhaps to their end. And so I see a lot of B2B, I think, service and agencies and companies here. So I was doing this to just perhaps focus what I might be looking through, but also as just to hold up a mirror to the group so we can see the cross-section of all the participants. So here's the session. I just showed quickly a preview. The first part is practical tools to define your business. I think we all know what your business is. I went to each of the websites and took a quick look, and there's a spectrum of smaller scale to much larger scale, much more mature companies. And so again, of all shapes and sizes. But regardless of your shape and size, there are still very consistent things that in North America and Canada we often look for when we have business partners. We want to understand how each business works. We want to know how you work. What is your value proposition? What are your plans? How did you get to where you are? What do you plan to do? And how will you benefit me, right? And a lot of that really summarizes as a storytelling exercise. So the first three areas are modeling your business, road mapping your business, what you intend to do, and the business activities you have in your business. How do you format it to communicate and to align within your own group? And then finally, how do you tell the story? And I use my current lab, the LCBO Next lab, where I mentored my team to create a story structure. And the hope is when I show you that story, you should be thinking, I have no reason to say no to what you just said. And so really the goal of doing these exercises and defining business is it should make it much easier for me to convince my customers, whether it's B2C, B2B, to either buy my product, take my offering, invest in me, whatever, it doesn't matter. But with any audience, if you can tell your story, I think that is a big key ingredient for success up here in Canada. The other parts are innovation, disruption. We'll have small emphasis on that. But that is a thing in North America right now and perhaps all around the world, except I think innovation happens a little slower in Canada. So that might be something to discuss, who knows. And then the Canada-Ontario Open Data Research. So I will have some links to Statistics Canada, the Open Data Project in Ontario, and maybe we'll have a lot of fun exploring a little bit of data there. You'll also have the links that you can copy or type into your own browser. I checked that you can access from anywhere in the world. So during the session, maybe you even may be exploring data relevant to your own business. So the practical tools, we mentioned modeling, roadmap, and storytelling. In modeling, I'm introducing three types of modeling. One is called the business model canvas or lean canvas. I don't know how many have heard of those. Perhaps we can do raise hands if you like. The second is, oh, I just realized that I can't jump out of this and see how many hands are raised. So what do you suggest, Viviana? Should I just go through and perhaps you can contribute, maybe some of the numbers and how people are interacting here with the talk?
Yeah.
Okay. Second is thank you. Second is mind mapping. And that is a visual tool for strategy planning, alignment, and just communicating organization or technical or any conceptual knowledge. And then process mapping. This is where you have a company, you have activity, you have process, you have flows. If your company is very small, 3, 4, 5 people, it's all in your head, right? But if you all got hit by a bus, no one will know how to replicate that. In a very large company, chances are you might have some of these, but there's so many and they're so comprehensive that still no one knows how the company works. So you'll see some examples of process mapping, and maybe we can find the right fit for you. For roadmap, we have a 4-step example of how to create a product or service roadmap for your company. So, again, on the different websites, I can see feature lists, I can see offering lists, and so on. But they don't tell the customer which is more important, which is more urgent, what is the priority, when do I expect these, right? And so in a company, if you do road mapping, you can help yourself, but also help your customers understand your path to delivery and your path to meeting their expectations and delivering value for them. And then final storytell example, okay? So I'm jumping into business modeling now. There are 9 questions often you're probably already asking yourself. Who are my customers? The segments, right? What is the value proposition? How do I benefit? Well, what are they getting out of it, right? Out of your product or service? How do you make money from this? You're not doing this for free, certainly, right? How will you take this to market, right? What are the channels? How do you distribute? Is there a supply chain? What does that look like? Customer relationships. How do you keep existing customers happy? How do you perhaps upsell and grow your offering to them so that they can use more and more of your capability and further grow themselves? But also for new customers, how do you gain trust? How do you get buy-in from them? How do you get them to say, I will go with you and not your competitor, right? Other questions, the remaining questions, key partners. Do you have partners where you have a very symbiotic, relationship? You have complementary, perhaps, offerings in the market, right? I sell calculators and you do taxes. And so I sell calculators. I say, well, if you're doing these fancy taxes with calculator, I've got a tax person you can use. The tax person says, here is how you do taxes. If you want to do it yourself and you need a calculator, here's a calculator business that I'd like to refer to, right? So how do you find partners in the market to benefit the both of you and lift both of you up? What are key activities? So what are the different tasks? What are the processes in your company that need to take place for you to launch a product? And resources, is it the who? Is it the what you use? And also how much will it cost? And then finally, it's the cost structure. So how do you organize these resources and organize these costs to function? So raise of hands, does everyone ask all of these 9 questions of themselves when they do business modeling? Right? To more or lesser degree, I'm pretty sure we all ask these questions. And if we don't, within a very short period of running the business, we bump into these questions pretty quickly, right? Because we, in fact, need them to move forward or to strategize and plan. So I'm introducing here the 9 questions I could have written a book on, right? You could have written a book on it with answers for your company. But some tools we use right now, including the labs I work in, the companies, even tech companies here, startups even, they use a 1-page canvas model. So this is one example of it, where they take those 9 questions and they put them into these boxes and they try to very concisely, very, in a very condensed form, can they answer these questions? And so when they put it in this way, it becomes a very helpful tool for brainstorming, for discussion, right? So you may have heard of the terms ideation, or just brainstorming in general. This is a model canvas is a very valuable way for.
Danny, are you moving your slides?
I am. Do you see business model canvas?
No, I still seen practical tools for defining your business.
Really? I've moved 3 slides since then. Hold on. Do you see my PowerPoint here?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
Are you guys still seeing the same slide?
I do.
Okay.
Practical tools for defining your business. Yeah.
Okay. Let me stop my presentation and restart the presentation share. Oh, I've moved a few slides since then. So I apologize for that. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing.
It's freezing.
My computer's freezing.
All right.
Right now. Now you stop sharing.
How's that?
Yeah, that's better. All right. We are in the business modeling 9 questions to ask.
Okay. I'm also going to just very, very quickly check my internet speed. So these are some slides I was going to show you. Statistics Canada. Let me just do a quick double check here. Maybe my internet is suffering a little bit of slowness here. Okay. All right. Yeah, I apologize. It is a little bit struggling, but do you see 9 questions, 1 to 5?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I now change 6 to 9. Do you see questions 6 to 9?
Yep.
Okay, so those are the 9 points I was making. I can review them just very quickly. So your customer segments, your value proposition, your revenue stream, your channels to market, and your customer relationships, right? Okay. The last 4 were your key partners you work with, the activities in your business to run your business, the resources for your business, and finally the structure. Okay. This is the 1 page I was talking about. Can you see the model canvas now? 1 page?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe can you read it well enough, or do you want me to jump into presentation mode?
Yeah, it's better to the presentation mode.
Okay. Sorry for the technical issues here. Do you see it now?
Yeah, better.
Okay. I'm going to mention when I change the slide, okay? So that if it doesn't change for you, you can just let me know quickly and I will try to fix the problem. So this is the 1 page model canvas where we break down the 9 questions into the 9 different groups. Okay. So all the questions asked in the previous slides, we essentially fill them out here. Okay. Now, for medium, large businesses, by show of hands, maybe you did the hand raising earlier. I'm guessing all businesses ask these questions, right? Now, if you do not ask them, especially for startups and mid-size, they will quickly run into obstacles or run into uncertainty if they do not answer these well. And I think these are some of the themes and questions that Viviana and some earlier and maybe later sessions will be covering with you. Okay, but this is a very simple snapshot tool that is frequently used. I can give some examples. The text is a little smaller here. I have a car company example and Amazon. Let's use Amazon. So Amazon, for example, the key partners. Does anyone see my Amazon example on the screen?
We see it, but with very little
text. Yes.
Text. But if you go through the key examples, we will be providing the slides, and you can see what is written in detail.
Perfect.
So you can go through the 9 steps, and also you have the link there for the examples.
Yeah.
So
later, if you share the slides, there are links for every slide where there is external material. So you can all go to these sources that I went to show you, to get the material, okay? So in this Amazon example, you know, their partners are UPS, FedEx, DSL for fulfillment. You know, for retail companies, they've got Nike, Best Buy, Calvin Klein, you know, major retailers, right? Their key activities for their business, they do fulfillment, right? They do just-in-time delivery. They do R&D to streamline, improve efficiency. And in the last 20 years, clearly we see the fruits of their labor in you know, going through these R&D processes, right? Right now in town here, they have probably a good-sized stake in some of these logistics companies where small vans are driving and delivering to houses. I'm not even sure if Amazon runs it or if they have investment in it, but they're tied to them somehow. So they've really expanded, you know, vertically integrated the entire experience, right, from their warehouse to your door. Their value proposition is e-com and also AWS, right? Those are the main benefits they bring to us as the consumers, both B2C, B2B. The relationships, they have best-in-class fulfillment systems so that we get products in 1 to 2 days, right? They have a customer first mindset, regardless of segment, right? If you call them and you're on the phone, they usually find different ways to solve your problems so that you come back to them as a repeat customer. Their customer segments, they've got their business customers, you know, their suppliers, also the retail clients, you know, the residents who purchase from Amazon to have shipped to their door, and channels, resources, and so on. So this is how that breakdown goes, right? Any questions of this tool and how it's used? Okay. Now, for smaller companies, in particular startups, there's now can everyone see my new slide? This is a more colorful, lean canvas slide.
Yes, the slide is moving. I'm
for smaller companies or startups now, it's very similar, but some of the language actually goes back to what Viviana was using earlier. Problems or solutions, okay? Your unique value proposition. One I like most is actually called unfair advantage. So this is a different take or different lens of that more traditional canvas. But I think this one actually lets you be much more aggressive, okay, in stating and answering these 9 business definition questions. Okay, so the one perhaps we can focus on is this unfair advantage, particularly in North America and Canada. If you're going to join an industry where there are many existing players, right, I think one thing that really you need to do to set yourself apart is to find that unfair advantage. I was talking to Viviana and saying that a lot of companies here, they actually have plans to, you know, internationalize, find customer bases beyond Canada itself. And for example, if it was Latin America as one of their destinations, well, the service you provide, they may provide the very same service in English and French in Canada, but they would not provide it in Spanish, right? And so if you, for example, take an unfair advantage as an example, you could say that what we provide is identical to what your Toronto company provides, except we have spent decades in Latin America, and that is just inherent to our cultural sensitivity and localization capability. We can get you started immediately down here, right? That is an unfair advantage, is something that you cannot buy or very quickly develop. And your company may have many unfair advantages, and you know, I think for companies that are trying to find a new market and grow in a new market, I think this is one of the interesting ways to see if you can find some shortcuts to accelerate your speed to market. And then the other ones are I guess, more or less traditional, right? If you see them. But for the sake of time and maybe going to data and having some more interesting conversations, I'm going to just jump past this, okay? The 9 blocks of Lean Canvas are very similar to the 9 questions asked earlier. All right, problem, customers, unique value proposition, okay? These are the same. Again, the focus is on the unfair advantage, the most difficult one to answer. But if you have an unfair advantage, that can help when you're looking for partners and investors, right? A great definition of an unfair advantage is the only real competitive advantage that cannot be copied and cannot be bought. Okay? And it could be insider information, not from an illegal standpoint, illegal insider information, a dream team. Maybe the team is the secret sauce, right? Or they have certain customers or first to market, a certain way to get to first to market. So those are examples of unfair advantage. And so question for you is, what does your lean canvas look like, right? Does anyone out there maybe want to spend 1 minute reflecting on if they've taken a very similar approach to creating a lean canvas for their company? Or do you think in 1 minute you could describe those things for your company, and just fill out a lean canvas example? If there's no one, that's okay too. But this is a very simple exercise for you to do a checklist and say, have I covered all my bases for my company? Have I checked all the boxes?
Who would like to volunteer to this exercise?
Maybe just an unfair advantage question, right? Who do you think you have an unfair advantage, and what do you think it is? No, if not, we can move on. And if you do, feel free to interrupt as I continue, okay? The next tool is called mind mapping. By raise of hands, have people seen or used mind mapping before? So mind mapping is a very visual tool, okay?
Yeah, a few people are replying, yes.
And it helps you to associate ideas, topics in hierarchical with parent, children, grandchildren levels, okay? Or object-oriented, perhaps, approach, okay? Whether used for brainstorm, for planning, note-taking. Do you see my mind mapping screen, everyone?
Yes.
Okay. And it's perfect for recording and even influencing, your internal discussions or discussions with your clients. At my lab, in the early day when we were trying to find problems to solve and we wanted to, get more problems into our lab so we can work with the teams to create solution, we did mind mapping for every business team that approached us. It took about 2-3 hours. And it starts with asking questions, nothing but questions. And as you ask questions and as you hear answers, the way you use the mind map is to categorize or classify the knowledge that you are learning and gaining into something that helps the entire team structure this knowledge so you can act on it, okay? Or to create a better understanding of the topic. SWOT analysis was mentioned earlier. And this is a mind mapping of SWOT analysis, right? So, we could take 10, 15 minutes walking through the steps of SWOT analysis, or I might take 30 seconds to do a very quick overview of SWOT analysis, but none of those compete with a mind map here that very clearly breaks down SWOT analysis for you. There might be different versions of SWOT analysis. That's fine, but you can have a mind map for every version of SWOT analysis. Right, so I almost don't even have to talk for you to see very quickly, my strengths, weakness, opportunity, threats. But what is a threat? Well, they are your external roadblocks, your marketplace challenge, the conditions of your economics, right? Any questions? So this is a very, very efficient way for a team to brainstorm, for a team to break down their knowledge. And what I have done in the past is when I have 2 or more teams who don't regularly talk to each other, but we're all trying to solve the same problem, what I frequently do is take a mind map and I create branches for the different teams or for the different process or for the different business segments. And I just, again, use questions. What do you do? What is your current process? And I could be writing down and creating these mind maps of their current process.
I have a question for you, Danny.
Yes.
How can these companies use a model like this? Because we have small and medium and large organizations participating. But as you notice, there's someone like, what happens if I don't have like a marketing organization that is doing market research? How can they use this tool like to identify things that they do know, and or things that they need to focus on, like for example things that they don't know, let's say in management. Is this useful for that as well?
Okay, so for that, let's say that's an example. Pretend the left side are your business organizations. So whether you're large or small, you can go through and list all your existing organizations and what their functions are and what they do and what they output. If you're a small organization, you can list what you have right now existing, but also what you still need to have, right? So potentially a medium or large sized corporation or company might have the exact same looking map on the left side of business function, except some of them you still need to hire, or you decide those pieces will be taken by a team of 2 instead of a team of 10. On the right side, what I would do is perhaps break out your business priorities, right? Is it time to market? Is it recurring revenue? Is it customer adoption? Is it getting numbers? What is your business model, right? Or is it a freemium model? Are you trying to just get more and more signups? Or are you trying to reduce churn? Or are you try to explore price sensitivity? Do a mind map and break out the business drivers that you think are priorities. And then what you can do is compare. Look left, look on the left side, look on the right side, and say, okay, if I order my priorities on the right side in order of importance, from the most important are at the top, the least important are at the bottom, then I look at my company structure and say, well, who should work on what? So that's one way to use a mind map, I think, for that. But potentially, that's one way to brainstorm, okay, what to do. I think, how do you plan what to do? You can use the road mapping approach that I'll show very shortly. Does that answer your question?
It does.
I think mind
answer the question.
Is really just a way to get everything down on paper. It is to take your brain and put it onto paper. I often, for example, my spouse, my wife and I, we argue, right? She's got a PhD, I have a PhD. We end up arguing about many things. Sometimes in our arguments, I say, hold on, back up. Can we have something on paper? Because otherwise, you can just keep circling and not really have a proper conclusion. A mind map is a great example of putting things very clearly on paper, so that when you do make a new decision, you can change the mind map to the new structure that you both or you all decide and agree on. Okay? So, example of strategic thinking. This is how you can do strategic thinking using a mind map, right? This is a mind map of how you can do strategic thinking. Here's a mind map of a course on how to do mind map, right? You've got the overview of the course. Oh, excuse me. You've got the overview of the course in the pink. You've got your outcomes in the green, what you will learn in the orange, the agenda of the course in the pink there. So you can mind map practically anything. Here's one of how do you think creatively, right? Your methodology, your overview, your learnings, your agenda. If you look at the methodology on the top left, well, in the methodology, you have multimedia, you have interactive discussion, you have practical exercise, right? You can mind map perhaps even how you and your child want to plan a weekend of fun. There are infinite number of ways that you can use mind maps. And here are some more resources you can use. The top link is a free mind mapping software that I use, and it's available for Mac and for Windows. Any questions about mind maps? Okay. Process mapping. For process mapping, it is not as free form as mind mapping. It is a little bit more rigid. It has a little bit more structure. Okay. So just to review here, the business canvas, the lean canvas, helps to identify what you need to ask yourself. The mind mapping helps you to brainstorm and throw it all on paper to make sure you don't miss anything. The process mapping is now after you have all your components, you need to give it structure. Okay? The example I gave earlier, if your company is only 5 people and you all get hit by a bus and you did not have a process in place or no mapping, no one will be able to pick up the pieces and replicate what you did. So for business process and rules, whether it's responsibilities of your stakeholder or even the data rules and the data flow, okay? Process mapping is an excellent way for letting everyone understand how it's done now. And again, if you have disagreement or you need to enhance, improve, modify, whatever, make versions maybe for different customers or different industry or different segment, you are putting it clearly down on paper, right? To communicate and help prioritize and get alignment, okay? Does everyone see this swim lane diagram? So this one is called a swim lane diagram because it is like 5 swimmers: my customer, my sales, my tech support, my engineering, my production. They are all swimmers, and they swim from left to right. Okay, I'm pretty sure many have seen flow charts, right? If, then, there, and make a decision triangle or a diamond shape, yes, no. For the most part, what you're doing is you're taking those flow charting elements, but you're putting it in a much more system-oriented view, where all your different stakeholders are shown in a swim lane, and then all your different functions, decision points, right, beginning and ending, all is shown on one map. And this is critical for when you want to, show your customers perhaps your process. Let's say it's a tech support process. And they say, well, what happens about this? What happens when I do that? If I have this problem, what happens? Well, you might start with a diagram of what you think you can do with the customer and what you think they will ask you. When you go through it together or when you explain it to them, the new questions they have, you can use it to enhance your process right on the spot, right? You can take notes in the meetings, bring them back to your office and update your process map to reflect all this new knowledge you may have. And it takes some strategizing to figure out, which are my stakeholders that deal with that process, right? And you're using this almost as a way to problem solve how you run your business. Okay? So if we follow this example here, it's for approvals, okay? So you start with a customer, they submit a purchase order. The sales, they take that PO, they enter it into the system, right? And in the contracts group, they have an agent who reviews it. Is it standard terms, like they just very easy and they just let it through, yes or no, right? If it's yes, then they pick the order, they log the shipment, and it's shipped. Okay. If it's not standard, then they need a approval request, and they take it to legal. And does legal accept it, approve it, yes or no? If it says yes, then the attorney marks it okay. It goes back to the agent, says okay, it's approved, and then they go and they do the pick, order, and ship. If it's not, the attorney marks it no, returns it to the agent. They have to cancel, sadly, right? And the order number 1 is not shipped, but they also have to let the representative know. So in this case, you've got your 5 swim lanes, your 5 stakeholders, and time moves down, right? And these are used all the time, whether you are doing support flows, whether you're doing sales flows, whether you're doing SEO or marketing. This is basically a way to show any business team or any business unit the work they do, the sequence of the work they do, what are the dependencies, right, between other teams in this work they do, where do they go when they have decision points. All those things can be captured very neatly in these process diagrams. Any questions?
No, no questions. This is just to highlight that the tools and concepts that probably exist in your companies that it will be good for you to map that value proposition for Canada, right?
Absolutely. And so when certainly up here when we do startup pitches, right? Or not just startup pitches, but any company and within companies, the way that we sell our stakeholders and get the buy-in is by communicating, how things happen, what the process is, and really validate, justify, in order for them to champion, right? What it is we're trying to do. here's an example of a sequence diagram, and this is more data related, right? But you have the different stakeholders or actors might be at the top here with lines drawn, and again, the time flows down, right? And this is a more technical one where it looks like an online purchase, right? And your buyer is going to the shop, you know, it displays the items, they add item to shopping cart, they calculate total, right? And this basically shows the logic flow, okay, of the organizational process or the technical process. And just one more quick example, again, showing that, you know, these kind of charts or diagrams is to let you very clearly, you know, use with your team to define how what your operating process is. Okay. This one is what someone made for. I think it was their automotive, their vehicle, their pump, and the control systems in their car. So this basically is the logic that flows, right, between the different components of their car system and what messages go to which and what triggers what, and it's basically a sequence of actions that happen in their car. Okay. So these are some resources for process mapping. Any questions on you know, these three tools for defining your business model? Is there anyone out there that has not used any of these? And maybe your website is where all of this is communicated basically to your customer.
People are writing in the chat that no.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, Danny.
Hello.
Hello, Carlos. Well, we're currently using Microsoft Visio as a
yes,
as a modeling tool.
Yep.
But I'm saying that you are listing some different tools.
Yes.
Well, can you? I mean, is it a good practice to use Microsoft Visio, or should we change to those that you are listing?
I see. I think so. I learned some of these process mapping in Visio, actually. I learned it in you know, 2006, whatever, Office Professional Visio.
Okay, yeah.
So why use exactly what you used? In the last 5 years, several reasons for using it. Sometimes the organization does not buy the license for Visio. And maybe there's not enough of the organization that uses that. But I don't think that's a big obstacle, okay? That you should not make that an obstacle. Visio is an excellent tool. There's no reason to hate Visio, actually, for doing any of this. Visio is excellent. But one consideration could be, when you make these, do you collaborate with people? Who like, you know, if it's only one person, if it's only one architect or one business stakeholder who decides and makes the map, then Visio might be the best tool for it. But if you have a company where different stakeholders across your company need to add and update this, maybe Visio does not become the most scalable collaborative tool to use, right?
Okay.
So I think that is where I would ask the question: how many people need to use this and contribute to it? Because you might trap it in Visio, and then it's tough for other people to make changes on the fly.
Okay. Actually, they released last year a cloud-based solution, a Vision cloud-based solution that right, that enables to work from different places.
Then I would say use it if you can afford it.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Can you come back, please, to a list of tools so I can get a screenshot?
Well, okay. There are but also, I mean, there are so many companies creating these right now. It is really very crazy how fast these tools are replicated across many, many, many SaaS. And so as long as when you Google for sequence diagram or process mapping SaaS. All right, this is Google that. You should look for their import-export capabilities. If they can export to some XML-based, right, file type that Visio can import, then you're fine, right? If it can import a format that Visio can export, then you're fine. So I think that the import-export consideration is what you should take into account when you are shopping for, different process mapping tools out there.
Thank you.
I don't have a favorite one because it's the map that I love, not the tool that I use. The tools they have different styles, so you can fall in love with different tools, I think. Sounds good?
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So for product road mapping, earlier I said you know what your company does. You have now organized it so you know who does what and when. But your senior leadership might say, okay, you guys are a smart bunch of people, but I just talked to a potential customer and they want this. So everybody stop what you're doing. We're doing this for the next 3 months, right? And everyone, hits their forehead saying, what is this guy doing? We had a plan. We were a month and a half away. Why are you switching and grabbing the steering wheel and pulling us all in one direction? This is where roadmaps can help a company. They communicate and they help you to track what your go-to-market plan is, okay? It's also a timeline. It can be very detailed. It can be very high level. It can be annual quarters. It can be down to the day. It can be a Gantt chart. Although, usually roadmaps are not Gantt charts. You should just get a project manager and have them hold the Gantt chart. I think a roadmap generally is much higher level than a Gantt chart, however, okay? But ultimately, what you're showing is across the organization, you're displaying the parallel effort of your groups and showing the sequencing and the timing and the priority, okay, of what everyone's doing. So the 4 simple steps for creating a roadmap. There are many ways to create a roadmap. I think this was one of the easiest I found to get you introduced to a pretty effective, first roadmap. So you take your list of activity. They might have due dates, right? Forget the due dates. We can go a bit higher level than that for the time being. And you take all your different tasks and who the teams are, and you just make a bar for all of them. Can everyone see this screen with the bar move from the left to the right? Yep. So they took all these activities and they broke it down into all these different boxes and in the different months that they need to be done. Okay? That's great. But now you know the timing, but you don't really know priority. You don't really know who, right? So you group by team now. You take those bars and you break them down. So in this case, do you all see web team, the mobile team, the marketing team, right? So you take the activities they need to do, which team does them, and then the timeline, the rough timeline of when they're happening. Hopefully, the things that are earlier are more important and have higher priority for the business. If your CEO comes to you and says, take this and you do this now, I don't care what else you're doing, immediately you can say, well, that takes this amount of time, and I put that bar, let's say in February, the second column here. And immediately all the other bars have to shift. And you say, if that's what you're asking, this is the impact. All right? So the third step is you take these bars and you stack them by feature. So each row, the first one is security 2.0, on-prem backup, code review. That's one feature. The second row is a new admin console and a third-party integration. You see this? Another feature. Look at the very bottom. Market analysis, customer outreach, and then SEO plan. So we have 1, 2, 3 in the top row, in the top section, 1, 2, 3 in the second section, and 1, 2, 3 in the bottom section. So we have 9 features, right, that are now separated. 9 features. You know which team does them, and you know the sequence of the tasks. But if you have a small team, this still might be much more than what you can actually do. Okay? So maybe you say, look, with our team, we can only get so much done at a certain time. Okay, and if we did do them and prioritize them, this is the sequence and when we expect them to be complete. So you take your features and you take your tasks and you now sort them by the starting date or the priority, so that you start moving from the top left to the bottom right. So on the left side of the screen, in the web team, the first effort is the new admin console, then third-party integration, then AD Security 2.0, then on-prem backup, self-service, API, code review, and the shopping cart. Now you've basically given the web team, right, a very good plan or roadmap of what they're going to be delivering from January to June. You can then color code by the status when you want to present to leadership. The black ones are, I'm working on them now. The light blue ones, the teal ones, they are in progress. The black are completed, sorry. The teal ones, the middle ones, are in progress now, in flight. And the blue ones, we have not started. Right? If you are a project manager out there and you've Gantt chart, you're probably thinking, Danny, I've done this before. This looks identical, just a different style. You're not wrong. But I think what we're trying to emphasize here is if we're communicating priority, if our teams are struggling to find alignment, if we are trying to communicate to our stakeholders, our investors, our customers, knowing it for yourself is one thing, but communicating and storytelling effectively is another thing entirely. So this is color coding based on prioritization, right? And I think we can agree that this view here is a much more accessible and easier to understand view, and I think creates much more constructive conversation than the Excel sheet that we started with. And some references here for road mapping. Any questions? So storytelling, I'm going to tell you a very quick story. It will take about 2 minutes. I have many more slides than 2 minutes, but I will get a copy of slides and just highlight my story as I go, okay? Earlier, we talked about how, in Canada, there's process, there's rationalization. People want to understand, right? They don't want to just get the outcome too quickly. They want to feel a bit part of the journey. They want some input. And so when you tell a story and you have a conversation, I think that's when you get people to really buy in and invest in your journey, in your journey with them, okay? You build trust, right? People will remember. You get to show your experience, right? Your history and all those things, okay? Even for new talent, right? If you want to hire a new team, especially younger generation of teams, they want to know why things are done. They want to know what's the impact. And really the most effective way is storytelling, right? Not Gantt charts. So at LCBO Lab, in March when COVID started and a lot of lockdown started happening around the world, the retail here in Canada, the LCBO, they had people line up outside the store. We said, oh my goodness, people have to line up. If they look through the window, they can see the product, but they don't know what's in stock. They have to wait in the cold. It's cold up here, right, in March. They have to wait in the cold, and then when they go inside, then they start shopping. We said, you know what? Why don't we build an app that shows them what's inside the store before they're inside the store, so that we can basically help with customer service. And when they are inside, they maybe they don't have to ask the staff any questions. They know exactly what they want. They know it's in stock. They just have to go pick it up and go check out. And that way there's less breathing, less talking, less social interaction. It's healthier too. So we felt that we wanted the goals to be reduce wait time, reduce the time in the store, and create delight. We want to help our customers and make them feel good. So we have a rough flow, okay? We have a customer app that onboards them and shows them how it works. We set the location of the store. They search products. They add products to that shop list. They can confirm it. Okay. And then when they go inside the store, they can pull that list, the shopping list, and buy and leave. We're thinking about a second app for the staff. They log in. They can see the confirmed list that the customers confirm outside the store. And if they confirmed it, they see a list, they can maybe pick the products, put it in a bag, put an ID on it, and when this customer comes in, they just pick it up from that shelf and go pay for it. Right? So we made some screens, we prototyped, and we built some flows. Right? You can choose your store. It shows you lineups because we have a question saying, how long did you line up for? And if people submit how long they line up for, we can show the future customers how long the lineups are. The main page, right, shows you the different alcohol types you can buy. You can browse it. You can do keyword search. You can see product detail. And then at the window of the store, there's a code that the staff can change. And you type it in, and it will confirm your list. So if I'm at home and I don't see the code, I cannot trick the staff to prepare it for me because I'm not actually there. So the staff don't have to waste their time for a customer who's not in line, right? And this way, the staff, they log in, they see the order, they pick it, and hopefully the customer who picks it, buys it, and they're much happier. And so this is an example of how we did some improvements. So when we launched it, we asked them some more questions. Initially, we had on a daily basis, the code will change. And we talked to the staff. The staff said, no, you know what? I think let us change it when we want to. If we see that people are tricking the system and it's not convenient for us anymore, then we'll change it. And so by talking to staff and getting their feedback, we made modifications to our system. All right. We started with a QR code initially, but then when we talked to the customers in line and we asked them for feedback, it turns out that QR, not everyone knows how to use it or can use it easily. So we made a website instead, and we made a poster for them to look at. All right. So I'll skip some of those, but we unfortunately, we sold this to corporate, but we didn't sell it enough to the technology group, the IT architecture group. They didn't think that they could sustain it. They didn't like our architecture. It was built a bit too fast for them, and so on and so forth. They had their reasons, right? I'm not saying they're wrong, but we have very different styles of development. And so we ended up not having enough time to, in the market, to have enough data to measure, did we reduce lineups? Right? And actually the stores opened up after that. And so the app was not used, didn't need to be used anymore. And so, which is a positive thing. But now we're in a second lockdown. So I think actually this app can be useful again. Okay. And what they did notice was, I think people did spend a little less time in the store, but the reasons were not just from the app. So we cannot fully claim that. And then we had learnings, we did some more evaluations, and we wrote some things about how you have to measure more vigorously, beyond the use case, how do we do blah, 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 blah. And so end of this was a story that we basically told and is a journey of how we created the app, how we talk to our customers, how we talk to our staff, right? And develop this application for use. Does that make sense? Or any questions for me?
It is an incredible story. Thank you for sharing. It was a good example.
Excellent.
And it shows the progress of the capabilities that you brought to the table. And that is something that as you reach Canada, you have to do a similar approach, showing what is your product and bring those capabilities and roadmaps and start researching what your customers would like to have here in Canada, so you can incorporate that into your storytelling and to your roadmap.
That's right. So I'm going to spend maybe 2 minutes on innovation disruption. But the key point I want to share here is, this is one example of the innovation model. McKinsey, the large consulting company, they have what's called the 3 horizons of innovation, of disruptive innovation. Okay, Horizon 1 is doing things to just increase profitability, increase bottom line. Okay, Horizon 2 is new business capability, and Horizon 3 is stuff that is really far down the line, like Tesla's new giga battery charging network. That's a Horizon 3. Now, earlier I mentioned how we were reflecting on the audience and who these companies are, you know, in this session. And I was observing that many are service providers to companies. So even if you don't yourself have a Horizon 1, 2, 3 for your services and your offerings, you should think very carefully about what horizon you think your customers are in. Are your customers doing Horizon 1, Horizon 2, Horizon 3? And based on their horizon and knowing them as your audience, you might be able to tell a different story or tell an optimal story, right? Using your business models and your definitions to create the most compelling story for them to say, you know what, you have some unfair advantage, or you have, you know, the correct value proposition, or you have the right relationship, or you've got, you know, the right component for them to meet the objectives for the horizons that they're trying to meet. So I brought this up not because maybe you are innovating, but think of your customers and think of the moment you feel they are innovating, try to figure out where they are, and you try to hit them at the sweet spot. And I think you'll have much more success in storytelling and you know, getting the point across and getting business that way. Okay. I think innovation, it's not for everyone. If you do Horizon 1, Horizon 2, right? It's about scaling, executing well. It's about uptime. It's about reliability. It's about service level. You know, quick turnaround, right? Helping the customer to stay up, keep, you know, 5.9 uptime or whatever it might be. But in Horizon 3, if you or your customer is very much Horizon 3, I think one of the few ways you can succeed there is by being very fast. And examples are Uber, SpaceX, Airbnb, Tesla, right? They move very fast, and if they made mistakes, everyone hears about it, and it also happens very fast. But they also pivot and pick up the pieces and continue again very fast. And if that's not your value proposition of speed, then consider other things like new capability, cost saving, or efficiency that you can do very well to help your customer, better than your competitors, right? So if you cannot measure, you did not make a difference. And so what I'm trying to summarize here is, you know, you need to measure, then improve, and repeat that. Okay, you have to measure. Few ways of measuring. You can do customer-focused measures. Do they understand the product? So the number of customer discussions, the number of feedback they get, what the conversion rates are when they try and buy, right? What's the lifetime value for your customer? What's the revenue? What are they willing to pay, rather? Do customers like it? Do they make repeat purchase? What's the retention? Are they loyal or not? If you tier your pricing, do they pay the more premium? Referral, do you get a lot of referrals? Some businesses are so amazing, they don't have to even advertise, right? Tesla has no marketing team. People tell each other to go buy a Tesla now. And our customers adopting, word of mouth, ability to take the revenue from one customer and you use it to bring in another customer and still profit, and so on. And a final one is lifetime value and looking at purely numbers, the revenue generating per customer, per buyer, per seller, per listing, per transaction, you know, and this is the one where maybe sometimes the accounting or the CFO and others and CEO might be looking at to say, is this a sustainable business model? Are we making enough money to justify this, or we just burn through our investment capital and then we shut down, right? So this was mentioned earlier, and this is the last component, which is the Canada and Ontario data research. I have not very much time left. I can certainly answer some questions after the session too. I have two slides here. This is the first. This is the second. Now, the two key things here are, one is Statistics Canada, which is canada.ca, where you can actually do sector intelligence, look at business resource, look at a broad scale, right? How much money is spent in different sectors. All that is available public data for Canada. You can look at trends in the data of your labor force, manufacturing and trade and GDP. All of this is gathered through the census that is done every few years, right? When we do elections, they have this long form census that we answer all these questions. Stats Canada collects them all, and then they make it public information. It's not individually identifiable, but it's made so that business, government, and other entities have a good idea of the population, demographic, and industry, and where Canada is headed. And then more specific to this province of Ontario, they are also trying to share government data. It's okay quality, depending on what your needs are. If you're looking more Canada-wide, I think the Canada ones are just fine. But if you are focusing on Ontario data is perhaps another way to go as well. Okay. Here, I will maybe show you one example here of proximity measures database. This one, I think, does geo points all around Canada. And for every point, it tells you the proximity you are to grocery, to pharmacy, to healthcare, to childcare, to primary, to school, right, to transit, libraries, parks. So this one is a very interesting data set where if you are doing some quality of life type of business, you can use it to your advantage and depending on what you want to learn from the data. So I'll go to that one. I'm going to share my screen there. Okay. Let's see, I'm going to switch my sharing.
Yeah, Danny, we're still in examples of data and reports.
Okay.
And I need to reshare it again.
Okay. Do you see my sharing yet? Oh, okay, okay. All right, do you see this, Statistics Canada? Viviana, do you see the Statistics Canada website now?
Sorry, I wasn't mute. Yes, I do see it.
Okay, so here is Proximity Measures Database, April 2020. And I tested it. I think you can load it from every location as well. But this downloads a database, a full database of GPS points in Canada and its distance to all of these different places: grocery store, employment, pharmacy, doctor's offices, childcare. Right? So I highly encourage you to take a look at this data set.
Excellent. Thank you, Danny.
So I think we don't maybe have enough time to deep dive into a data set, but I think that's a very good start to explaining that a lot of data, in fact, for you to use if you want to do industry, both national or local research. And by all means, if you have questions, reach out. And I think the slides that Viviana shared should be good starting resources for you.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank you very
Danny.
much.
All right. Is there any questions for Danny? All right. So before you go, Danny, if you don't mind, I can share again. Before you go today, I want you to go once more to Paul EV. I'm sending you the link. Please help me reply to this question. I just want to sense how satisfied are you with the content of this week? Was this helpful to you guys? And please go to the website, answer the question, and I will capture your level of satisfaction. I hope that we have captured things that you were looking for, like data pointers, tools and capabilities that you can use, and we will continue to build content around Canada that you can leverage. All right. This is wonderful. I'm really happy with the results as they are showing here. So you're satisfied, I'm very satisfied. I'm very happy with how the week resulted. And then a final question, if you don't mind, any suggestions for next time to make your experience better? Is there something you would like for us to like deep dive in the coming weeks? So we can kind of like research and do a little bit more. Are you able to see the question?
I see something loading. Any suggestions for next time?
Yeah.
And I see, I think David typed draw.io as another tool, and that's a tool we actually use also. And that one is integrated with Google Drive. So that one is extremely accessible and free for teams to collaborate with.
All right, so if there's no other suggestions for next time, I want to thank you all. Next week, we will have the Understanding Your Market. We will deep dive in the technology industries that are available in Canada, where they are. And we have done some competitors analysis for you on a small, medium business scale. So we will share that research with you guys. We are attaching as well a little assignment for the end-to-end plan. As I said before, they are like questions regarding the module that can help you close, or either you can use mind mapping to answer those questions using the tools that you learned today. If not, answer that to the best of your knowledge, and you may need to connect to other organizations in your company to get those answers, but that will help you out build your business proposition for Canada. If you want to send your, let's say, your living document to us, we're fine to receive it and start looking at your questions. I know for sure that some of you will have like a one-to-one consulting with us, so you can close some of those gaps at the end of the sessions and the seminars. So if you want to send it right now, you can. That is the email that we have. If not, we can review it at the end. So it will depend on you, Maria or Luis, how you're managing that with the companies participating. But for now, I want to thank you all and wishing you a good evening.